At a busy subway station, a group of rowdy bikers spots a young liberal wearing bold, politically charged clothing and begins to mock him relentlessly. They laugh and jeer, assuming he's defenseless. But the liberal's calm demeanor and surprising resourcefulness soon turn the tables, leading to a confrontation that leaves the bikers stunned and the crowd cheering. What starts as intimidation becomes a lesson in standing one's ground. The subway station buzzed with the usual mix of commuters, students with backpacks, professionals in suits, and a few tourists clutching maps. Alex stood near the edge of the platform, his headphones in and his backpack slung over one shoulder. His shirt, a bold shade of blue, bore the words, "The future is woke." It wasn't unusual for him to wear clothing with political slogans. He believed in expressing himself. A loud rumble cut through the air, but it wasn't the subway train. A group of bikers clad in leather jackets and sporting tattoos stomped down the stairs, their laughter booming and their boots echoing against the tiled walls. They stuck out like sore thumbs amid the polished commuters. Their leader, Vince, a burly man with a scruffy beard and a chain dangling from his belt, led the group. Alex noticed them immediately but didn't think much of it. He shifted his weight and glanced at the clock, waiting for the train. Unfortunately, the bikers noticed him too. "Hey, check it out," Vince said, nudging one of his friends. "Looks like we've got ourselves a little activist." The group chuckled, their eyes locking on Alex. He tried to ignore them, but they approached, surrounding him like vultures circling prey. "Nice shirt, kid," Vince sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "You trying to save the world or just annoy the rest of us?" Alex pulled out one of his earbuds, glancing up at Vince. "Just expressing myself. Same as you, I assume." The calm response caught Vince off guard for a split second, but he recovered quickly, flashing a grin. "Expressing yourself, huh? That's cute. You think you're changing anything with that shirt?" The group laughed, emboldened by Vince's taunts. A few commuters looked on nervously, whispering to each other but not intervening. Alex, sensing the growing tension, steadied himself. "It's not about changing the world in one day," Alex said, meeting Vince's gaze. "It's about standing up for what you believe in, no matter who's watching." Vince let out a bark of laughter. "Oh, he's got a mouth on him. What do you believe in, huh? Turning everyone into soft little snowflakes?" The bikers howled with laughter, and Vince stepped closer, his presence towering over Alex. "I bet you don't even know what it means to work hard. Probably never even had dirt under your nails." Alex felt the heat of the crowd's attention, but he refused to look away. "You're right. I don't know your life. But you don't know mine either. Judging someone based on a shirt says more about you than it does about me." The laughter died down, replaced by a flicker of unease among the bikers. Vince's grin tightened, his ego bruised by Alex's calm retort. The commuters began paying closer attention, a few even inching closer to hear. "Smart mouth," Vince said, his tone darker now. "You think you're better than us, don't you?"
"No," Alex said firmly. "I think we're all better than this."
The tension thickened, and the crowd watched, waiting to see what would happen next. Vince's expression hardened, his pride demanding a response. He wasn't going to let a kid with a woke shirt show him up in public. "All right, smart guy," Vince said, his voice loud enough to carry across the platform. "Let's see how tough you really are." Alex tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Vince gestured to the open space between them. "Let's settle this. Unless you're too scared." The crowd murmured, their curiosity turning the subway station into an impromptu stage. Alex took a deep breath, his mind racing. He wasn't about to back down, but he knew he needed to handle this carefully. "Scared?" Alex said, his voice steady. "No, but how we handle this says a lot about who we are." The bikers chuckled, but Vince's grin faltered. Alex stood his ground, refusing to rise to the bait. The stage was set, and the confrontation was just beginning. The tension in the subway station was electric. Commuters pretended to focus on their phones, but their eyes darted toward the confrontation. The bikers stood around Alex, their leather jackets and loud jeers clashing with the polished professionalism of the subway crowd. Vince smirked, stepping closer, testing Alex's boundaries. "So what's the plan, big guy?" Vince sneered. "You gonna lecture me about tolerance and love? Maybe sing Kumbaya while we're at it?" The bikers laughed on cue, their voices booming across the platform. Alex remained calm, his hands by his sides. "It's funny how loud you have to be," he said, his voice steady but firm. "It's almost like you're trying to convince yourself of something." The laughter faded, replaced by a ripple of murmurs from the crowd. Vince's face darkened. "You've got a lot of nerve, kid." "No," Alex replied, holding Vince's gaze. "I've got a lot of patience, but you're testing it." Vince stepped closer, so close Alex could smell the faint hint of motor oil on his jacket. "Is that so? Let me guess. You're one of those people who hides behind your phone typing out your little opinions but never doing anything real." Alex tilted his head slightly, his calm demeanor unwavering. "You don't know a thing about me. But if it makes you feel better to tear someone else down, go ahead. Doesn't change who I am or who you are." The crowd grew bolder, some stepping closer to the scene. A middle-aged woman whispered to her friend, "He's holding his ground. That kid's got guts." A few others nodded, their interest shifting from the bikers to Alex's surprising poise. Vince's grin twisted into something harder, more dangerous. His ego, bruised by Alex's composure, demanded escalation. "All right, kid," he growled. "You want to play the big man? Let's see if you can back it up." One of the bikers, a wiry man with a shaved head, chimed in. "Careful, Vince. You don't want to hurt the poor guy's feelings. He looks like he might cry." More laughter erupted, but this time it felt forced, as if even some of the bikers were starting to question their leader's antics. Alex scanned the faces around him, curious commuters, hesitant bikers, and Vince's boiling frustration. He took a deep breath, then spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Let me guess, Vince," Alex said. "You think toughness is about making noise, shoving people around, proving how strong you are. But real strength? Real strength is about knowing when to walk away." Vince's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "Are you calling me weak?" "I'm saying your strength isn't what you think it is," Alex replied. "And deep down you know that." The crowd murmured in agreement, their attention now fully on the exchange. Alex could feel the momentum shifting, the balance of power teetering, but Vince wasn't ready to let it go. "All right, enough talk," Vince snapped. He grabbed Alex's backpack strap, yanking it hard enough to pull him forward. The crowd gasped, a few stepping back instinctively. "You think you're so smart? Let's settle this right here." Alex stumbled but quickly steadied himself, glaring up at Vince. "If that's what you need to feel better about yourself, go ahead. But you're only proving my point." A subway employee, a wiry man in a bright orange vest, stepped forward cautiously. "Hey, break it up," he shouted. "This isn't the place for this." Vince shot the man a warning look, and the employee hesitated. Satisfied, Vince turned back to Alex, his smirk returning. "What's the matter, kid? Afraid to stand up for yourself?" Alex squared his shoulders, his voice unwavering. "Standing up for myself doesn't mean stooping to your level." The crowd began clapping, a smattering at first, then louder as more people joined in. Vince looked around, his confidence cracking under the weight of public judgment. Even a few of his biker friends shifted uncomfortably, their earlier laughter now silent. "You've got some nerve," Vince said, his voice quieter but still laced with menace. "But this isn't over." Alex held his ground, his heart pounding but his face calm. "It doesn't have to be this way. You can walk away, Vince. Or you can show everyone here exactly who you are." Vince hesitated, his fists clenching and unclenching. The crowd waited, their collective gaze pressing on him like a spotlight. For the first time, Vince seemed unsure. But his bruised pride refused to let him back down. "All right," Vince growled. "You're gonna regret this." The air in the subway station felt heavier as Vince squared his shoulders, towering over Alex. The bikers, emboldened by their leader's defiance, closed ranks, their intimidating presence creating a physical and psychological wall around Alex. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, a mix of concern and curiosity rippling through the onlookers. Vince sneered, his voice cutting through the tension. "You like to talk, don't you? Let's see if you can actually back it up." Alex stood his ground, his calm demeanor unshaken. "What do you have in mind, Vince? Because I'm not playing whatever game you're trying to start." Vince chuckled, a dark glint in his eyes. "Game? This isn't a game, kid. You're the one who wanted to act all high and mighty, lecturing us like you're better than everyone. So here's the deal. You prove to me, and everyone here, that you've got more than just words. Let's settle this." Alex folded his arms, his expression unreadable. "Settle what exactly? That you're louder? More intimidating? Congratulations, Vince. You win." The sarcasm drew a few chuckles from the crowd, but it only deepened the scowl on Vince's face. He jabbed a finger toward Alex's chest. "I'm talking about proving who's tougher. Physically, mentally, doesn't matter. You pick. Unless you're scared." Alex raised an eyebrow, his voice calm. "Scared of what? Playing into whatever insecure little display this is? No thanks." The bikers chuckled nervously, their confidence in Vince starting to waver. The crowd, sensing a shift, began to murmur again, their curiosity turning into subtle support for Alex. Vince's frustration grew, his pride demanding escalation. "All right," Vince said, his tone louder, aiming to reassert control. "You think you're smart, don't you? Fine. Let's see how smart you really are. We'll have a little challenge. Right here, right now." Alex sighed, glancing at the bikers and then at the growing crowd. "You're really doing this? Fine. What's your challenge?" Vince grinned, relishing the moment. "Simple. We'll each take turns answering questions. Something anyone here can verify. No tricks, no excuses. We'll let the crowd decide who knows more." The crowd stirred with interest, some smiling at the unexpected twist. A woman whispered, "This just got interesting." Another added, "The kid might actually outsmart him." Alex smirked, crossing his arms. "All right, Vince, let's do it. But just so we're clear, this isn't about proving who's better. It's about showing who can think before they speak." The jab didn't go unnoticed, and Vince's grin faltered. "Let's get started," he growled. Turning to the crowd, he called out, "Somebody throw out a topic." "History," a voice shouted from the back. Vince nodded, his confidence returning. "All right, history. Here's one for you, smart guy. What year did the U.S. declare independence?" Alex didn't hesitate. 1776. The crowd clapped lightly, but Vince wasn't finished. "Fine. Your turn." Alex tilted his head thoughtfully, then asked, "How many amendments are in the U.S. Constitution?" Vince blinked, caught off guard. He shifted his weight, glancing at his friends. 20? "Wrong," Alex said calmly. "It's 27. The crowd chuckled, a few even clapping louder this time. Vince's face reddened, and one of the bikers muttered under his breath, "Come on, man." Vince glared at Alex. "Lucky guess. Let's make this harder. Geography. Name all the countries that border China." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? China shares borders with 14 countries. Russia, Mongolia, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, North Korea, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Afghanistan." The crowd erupted in cheers, their growing support emboldening Alex. Vince clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. "All right, enough of this," he shouted. "This isn't about trivia." "Exactly," Alex said, his voice cutting through the noise. "This is about respect. You wanted to prove something, Vince, but all you've done is show everyone here how insecure you are." The crowd fell silent, the weight of Alex's words sinking in. Vince's face was a mix of anger and embarrassment, his bravado crumbling under the mounting pressure. "You don't get it, do you?" Alex continued, his tone steady but firm. "Being loud doesn't make you strong. Bullying someone doesn't make you tough. Real strength is knowing when to walk away." Vince took a step forward, his fists tightening, but the crowd began to clap, their support for Alex undeniable. Even a few of the bikers hesitated, glancing at each other uncertainly. Vince, realizing he was losing the crowd and his own friends, stopped in his tracks. "This isn't over," Vince growled, his voice low. "You've got no idea who you're messing with." Alex met his glare with calm resolve. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. The question is, do you?" Vince's face was a storm of anger and humiliation. His friends stood awkwardly behind him, no longer laughing but looking unsure of how to proceed. The crowd had shifted firmly in Alex's favor, clapping and murmuring approvingly at his calm composure and sharp retorts. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Vince said, his voice low but threatening. He stepped closer, towering over Alex. "But words won't save you when it comes down to it." Alex didn't flinch. He glanced at the bikers, then at the crowd, and back at Vince. "Words are powerful, Vince. They can build people up or tear them down. You've been using them to intimidate. I'm using them to stand my ground." The crowd murmured again, some nodding. A man in a business suit muttered, "The kid's got guts." Vince's jaw tightened, the growing support for Alex only fueling his frustration. "All right, genius," Vince said, his voice rising. "If you're so good with words, let's hear you talk your way out of this one. What makes you so sure you're better than us?" "I never said I was better than you," Alex replied evenly. "But I do think we're different. You're trying to prove something by tearing me down. I'm standing here to show you that I won't be." The crowd clapped again, and Vince's fists clenched at his sides. One of the bikers, a wiry man named Tom, spoke up hesitantly. "Vince, maybe we should just—" "Shut it, Tom," Vince barked, his frustration spilling over. "This kid needs to be taught a lesson." Alex sighed, taking a step back but keeping his gaze locked on Vince. "What lesson, Vince? That yelling louder makes you right? That threats make you strong? If that's your goal, you're just proving my point." The crowd grew bolder, their approval of Alex more vocal now. A middle-aged woman called out, "Leave the kid alone, he's already won." Vince spun toward the crowd, his face red with anger. "Stay out of this," he shouted, but his outburst only made him look more unhinged. Even his own friends exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence fading. Alex seized the moment. "You see, Vince," he said, his voice loud enough to carry, "real strength isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting people up, even when it's hard. That's what makes someone strong." Vince turned back to Alex, his eyes blazing. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Think you've got me all figured out?" "I don't need to figure you out," Alex said. "Your actions speak louder than anything I could say. And right now, they're telling everyone here exactly who you are." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound echoing through the subway station. Vince's face was a mixture of rage and disbelief. For a moment, it looked like he might take a swing at Alex, but one of his friends grabbed his arm. "Let it go, Vince," the friend said quietly. "This isn't worth it." Vince shook him off but didn't make a move toward Alex. Instead, he pointed a finger at him, his voice dripping with venom. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." Alex met his glare with steady eyes. "Maybe, but not today." The bikers began to back off, their confidence shattered. The crowd parted to let them through, watching silently as Vince stormed toward the stairs. Tom hesitated, glancing back at Alex. "For what it's worth," he said quietly. "You handled that well." "Thanks," Alex said, his voice soft but firm. "It's not about winning. It's about doing the right thing." Tom nodded before hurrying to catch up with Vince. The crowd began to disperse, but a few people stopped to pat Alex on the back or offer a kind word. "Good job, kid," an older man said. "You didn't let him get to you." Alex smiled faintly, but his hands were trembling slightly as he tucked them into his pockets. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the weight of what had just happened was settling in. As the subway train pulled into the station, Alex took a deep breath and stepped onto the platform. He knew this wasn't over, not with Vince's parting words still echoing in his mind. But for now, he felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He'd stood his ground, and he'd done it without stooping to Vince's level. The train doors closed behind him, and as it pulled away from the station, Alex stared out the window, his reflection mingling with the city lights. Whatever came next, he was ready. The subway station was quieter now, the bikers having retreated to a corner to regroup after their leader Vince's public embarrassment. Alex, though outwardly calm, felt the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. His hands trembled slightly, hidden in his jacket pockets. He stood near the edge of the platform, aware that many in the crowd were still watching him. "Hey, kid!" a man in a business suit called out, walking up to Alex. "You handled yourself well back there. Not many would have stood up to someone like that." Alex nodded politely, unsure how to respond. "Thanks. I just did what I thought was right." A middle-aged woman joined the conversation, her expression a mix of admiration and concern. "That took a lot of courage, but be careful. Men like him don't let things go easily." Alex gave her a small, reassuring smile. "I'll be fine. People like him rely on fear to control others. If you don't give them that, they lose their power." The man in the suit chuckled. "Spoken like someone who's been through this before." Alex shrugged. "Not exactly, but I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean being the loudest. It means staying true to who you are." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, shifting from unease to admiration. A younger woman with earbuds hanging around her neck approached Alex. "That was awesome," she said, her voice bright. "You didn't just stand up to him, you made him look small without even raising your voice." Alex's confidence grew slightly as more people voiced their support. The confrontation had turned the crowd in his favor, and for the first time, he felt the weight of their solidarity. It was a far cry from the isolation he'd expected when Vince and his gang first approached him. Meanwhile, Vince leaned against the subway wall, seething with anger. His friends, no longer laughing or taunting, exchanged nervous glances. Tom, the wiry biker who had hesitated earlier, spoke up. "Vince, maybe we should just let this one go." Vince shot him a glare that could have cut steel. "Let it go? That kid made a fool out of us, in front of everyone." Tom shrugged. "He didn't really do anything. You're the one who kept pushing him." "Whose side are you on?" Vince growled, his voice low and threatening. Tom hesitated, then muttered, "Yours, obviously, but this is getting out of hand." Vince ignored him, his focus shifting back to Alex. The kid stood near the platform, surrounded by a small group of commuters who now treated him like a local hero. Vince's pride burned at the sight. "This isn't over," Vince said through gritted teeth. "I'm not letting some kid in a stupid shirt walk all over me." Back at the platform, Alex felt the tension begin to ease. A few people gave him encouraging pats on the back as they passed, and the younger woman with the earbuds lingered, clearly impressed. "You know," she said, "I've seen those guys before. They hang around here sometimes, picking on whoever looks like an easy target. But you showed them up without even breaking a sweat." Alex chuckled softly. "I was sweating, trust me. I just didn't let them see it." She smiled. "Well, you've got guts. I'll give you that." The sound of boots clattering against the tiles cut through the conversation. Vince was walking toward Alex, his movements slow and deliberate. The crowd fell silent, their attention snapping back to the looming confrontation. Alex turned to face him, his expression calm but alert. "Vince." Vince stopped a few feet away, his arms crossed. You think this is over? It can be, Alex said simply. All you have to do is walk away. Vince's jaw tightened, his frustration visible. You humiliated me in front of everyone. No, Alex said. You did that to yourself. All I did was refuse to back down. The crowd murmured again, their support for Alex growing louder. Vince's friends hesitated at a distance, unsure whether to step in or stay out of it. Tom finally called out, Vince, let's go. It's not worth it. But Vince didn't move. His pride wouldn't let him. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Alex shook his head. I don't think I'm better than anyone, but I do think you have a choice right now. You can either keep this going and prove me right, or you can walk away and show everyone here that you're better than this. The words hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in calm reason. Vince stared at Alex, his fists clenching and unclenching. For a moment, it looked like he might lash out, but the growing support from the crowd seemed to hold him back. Finally, Vince turned on his heel and stormed away, his boots echoing against the tiles. His friends followed reluctantly, Tom glancing back at Alex with a faint look of approval before disappearing up the stairs. The crowd erupted into applause, the sound filling the subway station. Alex exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders finally releasing. The younger woman smiled at him. You really are something else, she said. Alex smiled faintly, glancing toward the stairs where Vince had disappeared. Let's hope that's the end of it. The subway station began to return to its usual rhythm. The crowd thinned out, though a few stragglers lingered, exchanging impressed whispers about Alex's calm defiance. Alex himself stood near a support column, trying to shake off the lingering adrenaline. The younger woman, still nearby, offered him a water bottle. Here, she said. You look like you could use this. Thanks, Alex replied, taking a sip. His hands were steadier now, but his mind was racing. Vince's words still echoed in his head. This isn't over. He glanced toward the stairs where the bikers had disappeared, half expecting Vince to return. Instead, he saw Tom, the wiry biker, walking down slowly, hands in his jacket pockets. He wasn't with the others, and his expression seemed conflicted. Hey! Tom called out, stopping a few feet from Alex. Mind if I talk to you for a second? The remaining commuters watched warily, unsure of Tom's intentions. Alex nodded cautiously. What do you want? Tom scratched the back of his neck, his eyes darting between Alex and the onlookers. Look, I'm not here to start anything. I just wanted to say, you handled that better than most people would have. Alex raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Is that why you're here? To compliment me? Tom chuckled awkwardly. Not exactly. I just wanted to explain something about Vince. He's not as bad as he seems. Alex crossed his arms, his posture still guarded. Really? Because from where I'm standing, he seems pretty bad. Tom sighed, glancing around before lowering his voice. He's got a lot of pride. It's his way of dealing with stuff. Life hasn't been easy for him, you know? Alex softened slightly but kept his tone firm. That doesn't give him the right to act the way he does. I know, Tom said quickly. I'm not making excuses, I guess I wanted to say that not all of us are like that. Some of us know when to back off. Alex studied Tom for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. But if you're here to make me feel sorry for Vince, it's not going to happen. He came after me, not the other way around. Tom raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. I get it. I'm just saying, he's not used to someone standing up to him like that. It rattled him. Before Alex could respond, the unmistakable sound of heavy boots echoed down the stairs again. Vince was back, his steps deliberate, and his expression darker than before. The murmurs in the station grew louder as commuters noticed his return. Tom turned to face him, his posture tense. Vince, Tom said cautiously, What are you doing? Finishing what I started, Vince growled. His eyes locked onto Alex, and the tension in the air became palpable. Alex took a deep breath, stepping forward. Vince, this is over. You don't need to prove anything to me or anyone else. Vince ignored him, his fists clenched. You think you're so tough? Let's see how tough you really are. Before Alex could respond, Vince lunged toward him. The crowd gasped, a few people shouting in alarm, but instead of panicking, Alex shifted his weight and moved with precision. With a quick sidestep, he avoided Vince's charge entirely, leaving the larger man stumbling forward. Vince spun around, his frustration boiling over. Stand still, you little... Alex raised his hands, his voice steady but commanding. I don't want to fight you, Vince, but if you come at me again, I won't just stand here. Vince smirked, misinterpreting Alex's words as a challenge. He charged again, swinging wildly. This time, Alex ducked under the swing and stepped behind Vince, using the man's momentum to his advantage. With a simple but precise move, Alex tripped Vince, sending him sprawling to the ground. The station erupted into cheers and gasps. Vince's pride was clearly more hurt than his body as he scrambled to his feet, his face red with humiliation. Where'd you learn to do that? Tom asked, genuinely impressed. Alex shrugged, keeping his eyes on Vince. Martial arts. Self-defense. Enough to know how to handle myself. Vince's anger flared again, but Tom stepped between him and Alex. Vince, stop. You're making this worse. Get out of my way, Tom, Vince barked. No, Tom said firmly. He's not the problem. You are. The crowd, emboldened by Tom's stance, began to clap and cheer again. Vince hesitated, his bravado cracking under the weight of public judgment. For the first time, he seemed to realize he was outnumbered, not just by people but by reason. This isn't over, Vince muttered, his voice weaker now. He turned and stormed up the stairs, his boots echoing in retreat. Tom sighed, shaking his head. Thanks for stepping in, Alex said, his voice calm but tired. Tom looked at him and gave a small nod. You earned my respect today. Just be careful. Vince doesn't let things go easily. Alex watched Tom walk away, the tension finally easing as the station returned to normal. The younger woman from earlier approached him again, her expression a mix of admiration and concern. That was incredible, she said. But he'll probably come back. What are you going to do? Alex smiled faintly, his confidence returning. The same thing I did today. Stand my ground. The subway station slowly settled back into its usual rhythm, but the energy lingered. Alex leaned against a pillar, catching his breath as the crowd buzzed with whispers about what had just happened. Commuters shot him approving nods or claps on the back as they passed. For all the tension and conflict, Alex had stood his ground and come out stronger. The younger woman who had been watching earlier walked up to him again, her expression thoughtful. That was brave, she said, but I have to ask, why didn't you just walk away? Alex looked at her and gave a small shrug. Because that's what people like Vince count on. They expect you to back down, to disappear. Sometimes you have to face them to show others that they don't have as much power as they think. She nodded, her gaze steady. Still, it's not easy. Not with someone like him. It's not about easy, Alex replied. It's about principle. You can't let someone's fear or prejudice dictate how you live your life. Their conversation was interrupted as Tom, the wiry biker who had stopped Vince earlier, approached again. His hands were stuffed into his jacket pockets, and his steps were hesitant. Hey, he said, glancing around awkwardly. Mind if we talk for a second? Alex straightened, his guard still up. Sure. Tom gestured toward a quieter corner of the platform, away from prying eyes. The younger woman lingered nearby, close enough to listen but far enough to give them space. Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I wanted to apologize for earlier. For all of it. Vince. He's got a temper, and sometimes the rest of us get dragged into his mess. Alex crossed his arms but softened his tone. Why do you stick around him then? Tom hesitated, his eyes darting to the ground. It's complicated. Vince, he's had a rough life. Most of us have. The bikes, the group. It's how we cope. But Vince? He lets his anger run the show. I guess we go along with it because it's easier than standing up to him. Until today, Alex said, raising an eyebrow. You stood up to him back there. Tom gave a faint smile. Yeah, well, someone had to. Watching you stand your ground made me realize I've been avoiding it for too long. Alex studied him, his skepticism fading. I appreciate that. But you know he's going to keep coming after me, right? Tom nodded. Yeah, probably. But I'll try to talk him down. He's stubborn, but he's not a monster. He just needs to see things differently. Alex sighed, leaning against the pillar. That's the problem, isn't it? People like Vince don't see anything but their own anger. They think the world is against them, so they lash out at anyone who's different. Maybe, Tom admitted. But that doesn't mean they can't change. You proved today that it's possible to challenge him without sinking to his level. That's something. Before Alex could respond, a voice called out from the other side of the platform. Hey, Tom, you coming or what? It was one of the other bikers waiting near the stairs. Tom glanced back at Alex, his expression conflicted. I should go, but for what it's worth, you've got my respect. Alex nodded. Thanks, and good luck. Tom walked away, joining his friends as they headed toward the exit. The younger woman stepped back up to Alex, her arms crossed. That was interesting. Yeah, Alex said, exhaling deeply. It was. She smiled faintly. You know, you don't meet many people willing to take on a whole group like that. You really made them think. Alex tilted his head. Maybe. But thinking and changing are two different things. True, she said, but you planted a seed. That's a start. The subway train pulled into the station, its brakes squealing as it slowed to a stop. Alex glanced at the crowd, which had largely dispersed. He felt a strange mix of relief and resolve. This wasn't over, not with Vince's pride still on the line, but it wasn't something he feared anymore. As the train doors opened, the woman smiled at him again. Take care of yourself, okay? Something tells me you're going to need it. Alex chuckled softly. You too. He stepped onto the train and found a seat by the window. As the train pulled away from the platform, he caught a glimpse of the bikers disappearing up the stairs and into the city. The fight wasn't over, but for now, Alex had won a small victory. Not just for himself, but for everyone who had watched and learned. And deep down, he knew this wasn't the last time he'd have to stand up to someone like Vince. But he also knew he could. And would. Alex thought the day's events were behind him as he rode the subway, the city's skyline blurring past the windows. But as he stepped off at his stop and made his way toward the street, he felt a presence behind him. Turning, he saw Vince leaning against a lamppost a few yards away, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. For a split second, Alex's heart raced. He forced himself to remain calm, his earlier resolve grounding him. You following me now, Vince? He asked, his voice steady. Vince pushed off the lamppost and walked toward him, his boots echoing against the pavement. Relax, he said, holding up his hands. I'm not here to fight. Could have fooled me, Alex replied, his posture guarded. Vince stopped a few feet away, studying Alex in the dim light of the street lamp. His usual bravado seemed tempered, replaced with something quieter, almost reflective. You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. Alex raised an eyebrow, unsure of where this was going. Thanks, I guess. But if you're looking for round 2, I'm not interested. Vince shook his head, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. No, I'm not here for that. He paused, running a hand through his scruffy beard. Look, I've been thinking about what you said back there, about strength, respect, all that stuff. Alex waited, letting the silence stretch until Vince finally continued. You're not wrong, Vince admitted, his voice quieter now. I've been angry for a long time, at the world, at people who don't see things the way I do, maybe even at myself. It's easier to lash out than to face it. Alex crossed his arms, his skepticism fading into curiosity. Why tell me this? Vince shrugged, glancing at the ground. Because you didn't back down. Most people do. You stood there and made me look at myself whether I wanted to or not. Alex tilted his head. And what did you see? Vince chuckled darkly. A guy who talks a big game but doesn't have much to show for it. A guy who uses his friends and his size to cover up the fact that he's lost. The honesty in Vince's words caught Alex off guard. He softened his tone, sensing a rare moment of vulnerability. It's never too late to change, you know. Vince scoffed, but it lacked venom. Maybe, but it's not easy. You think it's simple to undo years of this? It's not simple, Alex said, but it's possible. It starts with recognizing the problem, and you've already done that. Vince frowned, as if the idea hadn't occurred to him. Huh. Maybe. The conversation hung in the air, the sounds of the city filling the quiet between them. Finally, Vince extended his hand, his expression a mix of humility and defiance. Look, I'm not saying I'm fixed or whatever, but respect where it's due. Alex stared at the outstretched hand for a moment before taking it. The handshake was firm but not overpowering, a silent acknowledgement of what had passed between them. Respect where it's due, Alex echoed, a small smile playing on his lips. As they released the handshake, Vince stepped back, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. Don't think this makes us friends or anything, he said, the faint smirk returning. But I'll try to stay out of your way. Alex chuckled softly. Fair enough. Take care of yourself, Vince. Without another word, Vince turned and walked away, disappearing into the city's shadows. Alex stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. It wasn't the resolution he'd expected, but it felt significant nonetheless. As he headed home, Alex felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He hadn't just defended himself, he'd planted a seed of change in someone who seemed unreachable. Whether Vince would nurture that seed or let it wither was beyond Alex's control, but he'd done his part. Sometimes, strength wasn't about fighting or winning. Sometimes, it was about standing tall and offering a hand, even to those who least deserved it. The next morning, Alex sat at his kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee as sunlight streamed through the window. The events of the previous day played on a loop in his mind. The bikers, the confrontation, and Vince's unexpected moment of humility. For all the tension, Alex couldn't help but feel a small sense of pride. He had stood his ground and somehow left a mark on someone like Vince. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. A message from the younger woman he'd met at the subway station popped up. Saw you trending online. People are calling you the subway hero. Check it out. Curious, Alex opened the link she'd sent. A video of the encounter had gone viral, recorded by someone in the crowd. The clip showed him calmly deflecting Vince's aggression and delivering his firm yet measured words about strength and respect. The comments section was a whirlwind of praise, debate, and curiosity about who Alex was. Great, Alex muttered, leaning back in his chair. He wasn't one for the spotlight, but it was clear his actions had struck a chord with people. The phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. Hey, it's Tom. Just wanted to say thanks for yesterday. Vince won't admit it, but I think you got through to him. Take care. Alex smiled faintly, the words a reminder that change, however small, was possible. He typed back a quick response. Thanks, Tom. Stay safe. Later that day, Alex decided to return to the subway station. It felt strange to be back at the scene of it all, but he wanted to gauge the mood. To his surprise, a few familiar faces greeted him, commuters who had been there during the confrontation. Hey, it's the guy from yesterday, a man called out, grinning. You really showed them? A woman nearby added, You made us all feel braver, thank you. Alex nodded, appreciating their words but feeling the weight of their expectations. He wasn't a hero, just someone who had done what he thought was right. Still, their support reminded him of the ripple effect actions could have. As the train arrived and the doors opened, Alex stepped on board, ready for whatever came next. He wasn't sure if Vince would change or if he'd face another confrontation someday. But one thing was certain. He'd meet it the same way he always did, with strength, calm, and resolve. A week after the subway incident, life had settled into something resembling normal for Alex. He still received the occasional message or comment from strangers who had seen the viral video, many thanking him for his courage. Though flattered, Alex had no interest in being a hero. He just wanted to move forward. One evening, as Alex walked home from a late shift, the hum of the city quieted around him. The air was crisp, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. He heard the rumble of a motorcycle behind him and turned, his heart skipping a beat. Vince pulled up alongside him, cutting the engine. Relax, Vince said, holding up a hand. I'm not here to cause trouble. Alex exhaled slowly, his guard still up. So, why are you here? Vince swung his leg over the bike and stood, hands in his jacket pockets. His posture was less threatening, his demeanor subdued. I wanted to say thanks. Alex blinked, caught off guard. Thanks. For what? For standing up to me, Vince admitted. For calling me out. No one's done that before, not like you did. Alex softened but remained cautious. Did it make a difference? Vince nodded, his gaze distant. It did. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About strength, respect. I've been trying to be better. It's not easy, but I'm trying. Alex felt a flicker of hope. That's a good start. Vince shifted uncomfortably. I won't pretend I've changed overnight, but I'm done picking fights I don't need to, and I'm working on fixing things with my crew. They deserve better than the way I've been leading. Alex studied him for a moment, then extended his hand. Vince hesitated, then shook it firmly. Good luck, Vince, Alex said. I mean that. You too, kid, Vince replied. You're tougher than you look. With a small smirk, Vince climbed back onto his bike, revved the engine, and disappeared into the night. Alex stood there for a moment, a strange mix of relief and satisfaction washing over him. As he continued home, he felt lighter. The confrontation, the chaos, it had all led to something meaningful. Vince's journey was his own, but Alex had been a catalyst for change, proof that standing up for what's right could make a difference. Sometimes, Alex realized, courage wasn't about winning a battle, it was about inspiring someone to fight their own.